Hello everyone and welcome to Who Wore It Better, the weekly segment in which I review Raw and Smackdown back to back and try and figure out which show won for the week. And I have to tell you, between both of these shows, I'm getting very excited about the Royal Rumble pay-per-view. After a backstage kerfuffle in Stephanie McMahon and Mick Foley's office, the opening contest is the U.S. title match, Roman Reigns defending against Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens in a handicap match. But before that match can officially begin, Braun Strowman comes out. Then Seth Rollins comes out. It's a big continuation of the fight they had from backstage at the top of the show. Then Stephanie McMahon comes out, who I admit I saw a bit too much of on Monday night. She comes out and she delays the U.S. title match for the main event. Meanwhile, Strowman and Rollins happens right then and there. It's a match they had a couple of weeks before, but this one felt different. I felt this match was a lot more competitive, much less of just kind of like Rollins bouncing off Braun Strowman. Definitely Strowman still looked strong in this match, but Rollins still got a lot more offense in it. It looked more like this could be a match where Rollins won. However, the match ended in a double countout after Rollins jumps from the top of the post and eats it in the corner barricade, and they fight for a bit and then double countout. So one of these days, these two are going to have a match that has a legitimate finish. I don't know when that's going to come, but I think what we've seen so far from these two, I think there's a lot more that can be explored and a lot more that can be done here. The ladies have a bit of a skirmish backstage. Nia Jax decks Sasha Banks. Charlotte hits Bayley. As Bayley is selling, she inadvertently knees Sasha in the head. I don't know if anyone noticed that as she came down. Jack Gallagher versus Drew Gulak in Cruiserweight action. The best part of this whole match to me was Austin Aries making a crack about both of them needing knee pads. That was hilarious. The match ends with Gallagher's vicious headbutt, not quite on the level of Shibata and Goto from Wrestle Kingdom 11, but still pretty hard to watch nonetheless. It ends with the flying dropkick. Jack Gallagher wins. Shawn Michaels comes out to plug his new movie. You know, for all the ridiculous looks Shawn has had over the decades, I'd have to say his black sparkly cowboy hat, his Chuck Norris beard, and his hunting vest is one of the strangest combinations I've seen from him in quite some time. Shawn offers up a lot of Royal Rumble exposition before plugging his movie. He actually deflects a "one more match" chant from the New Orleans crowd. I thought that was pretty good. Then he's interrupted by Rusev, Lana, and Jinder Mahal. Rusev was actually really funny in this segment. I mean, I think when he gets the chance to talk on the mic, like, whether it's intentional or not, I think his delivery is hilarious. Not to make fun of him, I just think he's a naturally entertaining personality. I don't want him to go full comedy, but I think what he does in this role, I think, it fits him very well. Rusev saying he was the Bulgarian George Clooney, that was pretty funny. Enzo and Cass come out, and then the two of them, along with Shawn Michaels, start lobbing insults at the heels, comparing them to bad movies. And then Cass drops a joke about The Pianist, which is a 2002 film about the Holocaust. But somehow they managed to shove that into this whole sketch because, haha, pianist sounds like penis. So penis jokes, yay! This whole thing leads into a match between Big Cass and Jinder Mahal, who was kind of thrown under the bus by Rusev in the preceding segment. The match ends when Rusev goes for the distraction. Shawn Michaels hits Rusev with Sweet Chin Music, and then casts the Empire Elbow on Jinder and wins the match. You know, I think this was kind of a flat segment for Shawn. I mean, I think, again, he was just there to promote his movie, offer pay-per-view exposition, which he's very good at, but he does that a lot, I feel. Compared to the Undertaker segment, which I'll talk about later, I think this appearance just kind of seemed, it was just Shawn just kind of hamming it up. Him hitting Rusev with Sweet Chin Music, I don't think was bad for Rusev. It's kind of like when Rusev got hit with the jackhammer by Goldberg. I think Rusev's just kind of there to offer as a mid-card heel to get destroyed by legends. And, you know, on one level, that's not that great a thing, but the fact that he's constantly involved with these legends, he's done stuff with The Rock, he's done stuff with Shawn Michaels, he's done stuff with Goldberg. Clearly, they wouldn't think very highly of Rusev if they didn't keep putting him in these kind of positions, if that makes any sense. Sheamus taking on Luke Gallows in a continuation of the feud between Sheamus and Cesaro, and Anderson and Gallows. Really cool spinning heel kick into the corner by Sheamus onto Gallows. I don't think I've ever seen that move before, by Sheamus especially. Cesaro and Anderson were on commentary throughout the match. The match ends when Anderson and Cesaro have a scuffle from the commentary table to the stage. It distracts Sheamus only momentarily though. Like, you think that's going to cost them the match, but it doesn't. Sheamus turns around, hits Gallows with the brogue kick, and wins the match. So now Cesaro and Sheamus and Anderson and Gallows are even Stevens when it comes to singles matches. They're probably going to have a tag title match at the Royal Rumble, and we'll see where this feud goes from here. Mick Foley sporting his new new haircut. 2 weeks ago, he had the long hair. Last week, he had this kind of the scruffy short hair. This week, he has the buzz cut. Next week, it'll go back to long again. Foley calling out the Undertaker tonight. Basically, Stephanie McMahon showing off her lady balls all over the place, dominating every face she could possibly find throughout the show, whether it be Seth Rollins, Bayley, and Sasha Banks, and now Mick Foley. Anyway, basically giving Foley the ultimatum that his performance review hinged on him providing and producing the Undertaker on Raw. This was his deadline. Stephanie comes out and gives a performance review in front of everybody. She puts Foley over for the things that Foley did while GM of Raw, the decisions he made, but the missteps he made as well, and also putting over the fact that the one unforgivable sin that Foley did as general manager was he let SmackDown beat Raw in the ratings war once. Anyway, before Stephanie makes any kind of sweeping declaration about Mick Foley, the Undertaker does come out, makes his entrance, and in something I never saw coming, announced that he will be in the Royal Rumble match, which was, I thought, a really cool announcement. Kind of came out of nowhere for me. But the second that he announced that, they immediately cut to the back to show Braun Strowman watching it. It was they immediately telegraphed there's going to be a Braun Taker confrontation, right away. They didn't give you a minute for this to breathe or for you to ingest this news at all. I thought they rushed that part. Let the Strowman Taker confrontation happen naturally, either a week or two later, maybe even 5 minutes later, at the end of the segment, or at the match itself. Don't do it immediately after that. I thought that was a little bit rushed. Charlotte and Nia Jax taking on Bayley and Sasha Banks in a tag team action. Not much to say about this match. Bayley did the brunt of the work for the faces. Later on in the match, Nia knocked Sasha off the apron. Sasha's still selling her knee injury from Roadblock, so that's why she was used in a limited capacity. And so, yeah, but Sasha was knocked off the apron and just kind of disappeared for the rest of the match. Bayley fighting two women at once, essentially. Doesn't notice the blind tag. She gets crushed twice by Nia Jax, and the heels win. So it's a good look for the heels, in particular Nia Jax. At this point, the way they're building her now, I'm curious if Nia is going to be involved in the Women's Championship match at the Rumble between Charlotte and Bayley, not being additionally added into the match or even being Charlotte's bodyguard. I just have a feeling she's going to be involved in the finish somehow. Maybe she'll come out, then Sasha will come out. Maybe there's some way all four women will be involved in this match at the pay-per-view. That's just my prediction. Something's going to happen in that regard. Titus O'Neil still wants the New Day. The New Day are still assaulting people with cereal. To me, that never gets old. Anyway, the New Day are going to offer Titus his NXT redemption. They show this clip of him tripping and falling during an obstacle course gimmick from 2010. They show that one clip over and over again, almost to an annoying degree in the highlight package. And so then they offer him the chance to do it again. He nails it. He goes around really quickly, but he drops the keg before crossing the finish line. He pulls it to Shawn Jackson, essentially. He celebrates too early, so they laugh at him some more. And then it leads to a match between Titus and Kofi Kingston. Titus using the Dominator as a throwaway move. Sorry, Ron Simmons. The match ends when Kofi beats Titus O'Neil. So now next week we're going to get the inevitable match between Titus and Big E, so Titus can collect all three. For reals this time, in the main event, Roman Reigns defending the U.S. Championship against Jericho in a handicap match. This match felt a little bit different than the matches we've seen before, the one-on-ones, with Roman taking on Chris and Kevin individually, because it's 2-on-1. It's not just the other person sneaking in, trying to get a cheap shot in for the other person to win. They're both actively attacking him, which I think makes it for a better story in the grand scheme of things. It's at least a different story. They do a good job jumping Roman early in the match and just kind of hurting him early on, running him into the shark cage. Jericho bleeds at one point. I don't know what caused that. I did laugh when Kevin was audibly calling for the pop-up code breaker and then it gets countered. I thought the whole thing made me laugh, just Kevin being so confident about it, and then it just totally backfires. That was pretty good. Lots of fast-paced double team spots, each guy picking their spot and just tearing apart Roman Reigns. This is the strongest I think Owens and Jericho have looked in a long time in this 2-on-1 environment, which is good because they're heels and I think they're allowed to get away with being dirty and sneaky and 2-on-1 stuff. There's a clever codebreaker powerbomb into the apron spot, a combo one after the other. That was really cool. Jericho hits Roman Reigns with another codebreaker after Roman gets the shit beat out of him, and Jericho wins. Jericho is the new United States champion. They've been teasing it for weeks and weeks, and finally it happened. Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens now each hold singles gold. They're the two-man power trip on Raw, and I thought that was a great way to close out the show. I'm glad it happened. I was hopeful it would happen. When I first heard the match being announced, I was kind of pessimistic. Oh God, Roman Reigns is going to defy the odds again, John Cena-esque manner, but that didn't happen. I think he was given an emphatic beatdown. It was probably the most convincing the heels have looked, especially when you consider last week how stupid both Chris and Kevin looked in trying to thwart Seth Rollins and Roman Reigns the week before. They both failed in that regard, but this week they looked like a solid unit. They just like attacked and divided and conquered Roman Reigns. And Roman Reigns still looked strong at times. He still had to fight two men, and he ultimately got beat by two men. So I think it was still a good look for Roman Reigns, but he didn't look overly strong. He didn't look unrealistically beating the odds kind of strong. And again, the heels look great, and Chris Jericho checks off another career highlight. You know, he gets the one title he hasn't really won before. He's been a multiple-time Intercontinental Champion and World Champion, and now for the first time, he's the U.S. Champion. SmackDown begins with the Ambrose Asylum, the new Intercontinental Champion, Dean Ambrose, talking about his win. The Miz comes out and interrupts him, and I thought it was weird that when you consider the last time The Miz had a huge meltdown on Talking Smack, they took advantage of it and they ran with it. But this time, last week on Talking Smack, when The Miz had an even more angry and bigger meltdown than before, they didn't touch on it at all. I don't even think they talked about it really on SmackDown this week. And the fact that Miz was so composed again after having that big meltdown, I kind of wish they did more with that as a follow-up. That was like one of the biggest knocks for me on SmackDown this week, was the lack of follow-up with that. And they're usually very good at keeping continuity and following up on things like that. But this week on SmackDown, they just kind of fell short on what I thought was a big moment, or what could have been a big moment after what happened on Talking Smack last week. The Miz demands that Ambrose just hand him the belt back, continuing the trend of heels making ridiculous demands for things that are just impossible or things that are not logical, like Rusev on Monday asking Lana being put in the movie. Anyway, the Miz is handed the participation award, kind of turnabout from when he gave one to Dolph Ziggler. That was pretty funny, and then they have a big fight, a scuffle. Miz attacks Dean. Maurice goes to slap Dean Ambrose, but Ambrose ducks, hits The Miz. The Miz wins the day there. So that was kind of a good opening segment, a good way to progress the storyline between these two without them having a match. Although, again, I do wish they followed up more with The Miz. I wish they gave The Miz something to do, beat up some jobber, get his heat back, and show that he's still pissed. But I guess we're saving that for a later segment this night. The rivalry between Nikki Bella and Natalya getting fierce. Natalya jumps Nikki from behind backstage before their match to happen immediately following this. Then it doesn't really turn into much of a match. It's more of a brawl. It goes everywhere. The referees try and break it up. Natalya gets the upper hand, hits Nikki with the sharpshooter, and stands tall as kind of a payback for last week when she was knocked the F out by the big forearm by Nikki. So yeah, I think, like I said, I think the way this storyline started with Natalya revealing herself as the assailant a little too soon, that was kind of a sour note for me, but I think they've started to build on that and make it into something worth watching. Remember that angry heel thing I was talking about earlier and how I wish they did that with The Miz? They did it instead with Dolph Ziggler on Tuesday night. And so what they had was Dolph Ziggler still not fully heel yet. You could see that in the promo he had before his match where he was just silent. You could just tell that like he's still conflicted about things. And so what you had here in his match with Kalisto, it was very like he was a lot more aggressive looking than he normally was. Not full heel, just a little more aggressive. And at the same time, though, he got lazy. He did the cocky pin. It's very reminiscent of a match that Eddie Guerrero and Rey Mysterio had years ago, where Dolph goes for the cocky pin, Kalisto rolls him up, and he actually wins the match. On one level, not a good look for a guy who's supposed to be turning heel to losing his first match post-heel turn. But basically, Dolph gets his heat back by assaulting Kalisto. After that, he beats him up. Then Apollo Crews comes to make the save. Dolph beats Apollo Crews up. And so you see this crazy look in Dolph's eyes. Originally, he was just kind of looking conflicted, just like, so struggling. And then by the end, he was just like getting wild-eyed. Like, oh, okay, this is getting very interesting. I'm liking what they're doing with this here. So hopefully this heel turn will result in some wins for Dolph Ziggler at this point. You'd hope for that to be the case, but as of right now, the heel turn with Dolph Ziggler is more gradual, and hopefully it'll have a better payoff as time goes on. SmackDown tag titles are on the line as American Alpha defend against the Wyatts, Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton, to be specific. This is a really good match, my favorite match of the night on SmackDown. There were not one, but two hot tags. Very nice. American Alpha are great at selling the offense they were given by Randy and Bray. Great at doing those deadweight suplexes. They did a lot of those. They were throwing those around like candy. Randy Orton hitting Gable with a sick drape over DDT. The way that Gable sold that was, to me, was very reminiscent of when Rob Van Dam sold big suplexes and pile drivers. Didn't bounce so much, but I like how he was planted, and that was really cool there. And then the match ends when Orton goes to the RKO. Harper gets on the apron for some reason. I know he was kind of like brushed off when Orton took Gable and put him through the ropes, and that kind of knocked Harper off. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but then Harper, for whatever reason, just gets up on the apron to talk to the ref, and that's the distraction that causes Gable to roll up Orton and win the match. So again, it was a very fun match, told a very good story, very interesting where they're going with the Wyatts here. They're obviously, from the beginning, there's been conflict between Randy Orton and Luke Harper, and it's finally reaching, it seems to be a boiling point, but Bray Wyatt was able to calm things down after that. So yeah, I'm very curious to see where that goes. Daniel Bryan advertises a match for next week on SmackDown where the women's title will be defended, Alexa Bliss versus Becky Lynch in a steel cage. Again, I think we're seeing shades of Charlotte and Sasha Banks on Raw where there's kind of one-upsmanship, like let's see what kind of crazy stipulation matches we can put with these two women on SmackDown. But I think it's still, it hasn't quite reached Sasha Charlotte proportions just yet, but I think it's teetering on the edge of that at this point. But I do like the fact that SmackDown is constantly advertising matches for the following week. They've been doing that since almost the beginning of the brand split, and I think that's the one big difference between them and Raw. Raw is now finally starting to advertise matches early on, like a week before, but SmackDown has been doing it. I think that's been a big reason for their success and people viewing them, and the big reason for people tuning in. Carmella versus CJ Lund, aka Thunder Kitty, who I met several years ago back at a show in Vegas. She's a very nice woman and she's a great worker, but you wouldn't tell from this match. And this is, you know, I don't know who's to really blame for this match because everything just to me looked kind of rushed and sloppy at times. I thought the spot where Carmella, whatever move she was going to hit CJ, Thunder Kitty with, leading right into the Code of Silence, you know, CJ didn't know if she was taking a front bump or a back bump, so she took like kind of neither. She just kind of fell on her ass. It was kind of weird. But it was just annoying because JBL could not stop making fun of CJ's look during that whole thing. She has, you know, Thunder Kitty has kind of a retro look. That's her whole gimmick. And so JBL was just making fun of it the whole time. And then Ellsworth with two very blatant interference spots, one of which like right in front of the referee. And again, I don't know if the referee was out of place or Ellsworth just didn't get the timing right. But yeah, I think this whole match was just kind of a clunker from start to finish. I think everyone has a hand in the blame for it. Ultimately, Carmella wins the Code of Silence, and that's kind of where we ended up. Main event time. John Cena, who I forgot to mention earlier in this review, had a really good promo earlier in the night. I thought he was very amped and angry, and like you still couldn't tell like what side he was really on, but he does sound a little more conceited, a little more like it's all about me, but he's not full heel. So I think this promo was another strong one by Cena this time. Anyway, John Cena taking on Baron Corbin in the main event. This is a really fun match for the most part to watch. I liked Cena how he dodged the charge into the steps by Baron Corbin. He was running him. Cena like kind of gets up onto the apron and Corbin just eats the steps. That was kind of a cool little counter there. I did like for the most of this match how Corbin was, and just in general, he's being very well protected, I think. And I think this match, for the most part, helped kind of continue that, how basically he no-sold a John Cena shoulder tackle, and that's kind of one of his standard traditional takedown moves. Corbin no-sells it. I thought, yeah, Corbin was looking very strong here. Big tornado DDT by John Cena, and then they kind of was like, after that point, it was kind of cut and dry. Here's the same Cena finish you've seen for years. It was the 5-knuckle shuffle, the attitude adjustment, and then that was it. And Baron Corbin lost clean. It was kind of a flat ending to what was an otherwise solid match between these two. You know, I'm not saying that Corbin can't lose clean, but it just seemed to kind of come out of nowhere that John Cena all of a sudden just kind of did his 3 moves, and then like that was it. For a guy like Corbin who was able to, you know, stand up to guys like Dolph Ziggler and AJ Styles pretty well, I thought the ending could have been done a little bit more creatively than that, but Cena looked strong. Corbin, this is a bit of a setback, but I think he'll bounce back. Time now for me to choose which show won for the week, Raw or SmackDown. And folks, this one was a particularly tough one for me this week because last few weeks has been easy to say SmackDown wins because Raw wasn't even trying. But this week, I feel both shows are kind of in like full-on Royal Rumble build-up mode, and I think both shows delivered. Raw was way better than what they've been putting out for the last few weeks, and I think ultimately their big moments were better than SmackDown's big moments, if that makes any sense. It's very controversial. Y'all are probably gonna hate me for saying this, but I am gonna give Raw the win this week, and let me explain why. When you're just comparing the Undertaker's appearances, his most recent appearances, on SmackDown before Survivor Series, he showed up and said, "You better not lose or I'll get mad." And I gave SmackDown the win that week on the merit of being the Undertaker, and we don't see him that often. And Raw, on this week, he had a much better, much more impactful surprise statement. He's gonna be in the Rumble match. That was a way better use of the Undertaker, in my opinion. So that's a big plus for me. Also, again, the main event, I love the fact that heels are looking strong. Chris Jericho is the U.S. champion. Yay. Roman Reigns is not the U.S. champion. Yay. I like what they're doing on Raw with the mid-card stuff and the Cruiserweights, the way they're building them up for 205 Live. I like the storyline progression they're doing there, however little. It's still something. SmackDown on the whole was still a good show. I loved the SmackDown tag title match, and I liked Dolph Ziggler's heel turn progression. But on the other hand, there's so many things that happened on this show this week that to me screamed wasted potential. Things that they could have built on better, but they didn't. Like, again, they had no follow-through on the Miz's tantrum on Talking Smack the previous week. I thought that the finish to Baron Corbin and John Cena was too underwhelming, in my opinion. It kind of ruined what I thought was a decent match between the two of them. And again, the Carmella-CJ Lund match was just bleh, and JBL's commentary was bleh. Like, it just didn't sit well with me. So ultimately, I'm going to give Raw the win this week, as controversial as it may seem, but y'all know I'm all about controversy when it comes to Wrestling with Regret and who wore it better. Let me know what you thought won for the week in the comments section below. Be sure to thumbs up this video if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and buy the t-shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.